Guys, I honestly could not believe this at first. I thought it was some sort of quite clumsy satire, to be honest with you. But you know what? These are irredeemably bleak times. The world has well and truly gone to pot, and I welcome any comic relief just as a little treat, just to break up the misery. So let me thank, from the bottom of my heart, the Conservative Party, our blessed party of government, for providing a little bit of humour to lighten the mood. Now, I know some of you are like, really, Owen? The Tories, just because they've overseen the worst squeeze in living standards since the 1810s, decimated the welfare state, left the NHS and other key public services on their knees, whipped up hatred against every minority they can think of, and generally wage war on the poor, doesn't mean you can't give them credit where it's due. Now, you may or may not have heard of Grant Shapps. He's a Tory cabinet minister. He's been knocking around for quite a while. Now Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero. Now, not the only name the big fella goes by. He also used the pseudonym Michael Green when he had a second job as the founder of a web publishing business. He was also alleged to have used Sebastian Fox and Corinne Stockheath, which kind of sounds like a porno name, if we're honest, but I'm not making any accusations there before an exchange of legal letters happens. Anyway, speaking of which, he sent a letter to Keir Starmer, which is so unhinged, so off the charts deranged, I genuinely think someone needs to stage an intervention. So what he's done is literally asked the Labour leader to request the Labour leader pays for the criminal damage the Just Stop Oil attacks on the Energy Security Department caused this morning. I like the request he's inserted. Request. It's that lovely, quintessentially English polite quality about it, doesn't it? Before some batshit demand. Oh, hello there. I'm writing to request you pay for your obscene crimes. Yeah, I mean, it's nuts. As the political wing of Just Stop Oil, he writes, it's the Labour Party, not the taxpayer, that should be paying the bill. Okay, now he really has himself committed a serious crime, trying to make Keir Starmer look a lot cooler than he actually is, which I think should be a capital offence. Anyway, the letter has a big old rant about Just Stop Oil being an extremist group. The pretty tenuous link is that the energy businessman, Dale Vince, has donated to Labour and has separately donated to Just Stop Oil. So he writes, I'm writing to ask you to pay to repair the damage caused to the department. The British public should not have to foot the bill for your mates in Just Stop Oil and their destructive activity. Are you high, though? Sorry to ask, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that, by the way. Whatever it takes for you to relax. It's just Starmer has very clearly, repeatedly slagged off Just Stop Oil and even demanded tougher crackdowns on the right to protest in response to climate activists. Labour, he writes, are now even adopting the policies of Just Stop Oil. We'll come on to that. It is clear for all to see the Labour Party is a party of protest. Labour will never stand up for the British public. Dude, the Labour Party has just adopted your policy of starving children. Like, what more do you want them to do? Give them some credit, you ungrateful so-and-so. Now, he writes, given your close connection to the group responsible for this damage, you must also be responsible for picking up the bill to clean up for them. We estimate this to be £3,000 to £4,000. We will send you the invoice in due course. Okay, you absolute raging maniac. Close connections to Just Stop Oil between the Starmer leadership and Just Stop Oil. Both parties are united in their contempt for climate activists. If you want close connections between Starmer and various things, then, I don't know, look at the Tony Blair Institute, which he did a big speech at this week, which is partly funded by the head-chopping Saudi dictatorship, which has given the Institute millions of pounds, despite exporting international extremism, chopping off the heads of gays and dissidents, carpet-bombing children in Yemen, suppressing all democratic rights, brutalising women. We could go on. That's a close connection you should be interrogating. You won't be interrogating that because you yourselves are up to your neck in the Saudi dictatorship. And it's just one example. But what I'm saying is you've gone down the wrong path, haven't you, at best? Now, obviously, the Tories are targets for Just Stop Oil for a very basic reason. We face an existential threat as a human species. Afraid to say. The government is granting new licences for oil and gas developments, despite the fact we face an existential threat. I'd quite like to keep human civilization. It's got its ups and downs. It's got some cultural faux pas, which some of us would get rid of. But overall, it's pretty good. It's worth preserving, is all I'm saying. It's better than the alternative, which is Armageddon. Now, that's not just oil and gas developments. They're essentially, for example, preventing the development of onshore wind farms for cynical electoral reasons. Actually, most people support onshore wind farms. It's just a certain type of unhinged. I keep using that term, but got what we got here, guys. Tory activists. So it's their base, basically. Like the eyesores. They're actually really pretty, I think, but whatever. Anyway, they're drawing up plans to drop the country's flagship £11.5 billion climate and nature funding pledge. So they really are watering down their commitments. I mean, we could look at over the last few years, for example, a mass insulation program this country desperately needs, which would have dealt with fuel poverty to a significant degree, created loads of jobs, and dealt with the climate emergency. But that was cut back, including by Rishi Sunak as Chancellor. Now, as for Labour, their one big flagship policy for ages was a £26 billion a year climate transition fund, which they've now massively watered down. Despite the fact, as we can see at the moment, looking at temperatures soaring across the world, the Persian Gulf airport, the temperatures reached 67.7 centigrade. Animal human life can't exist at that temperature. Not designed for it. We're not Venus, are we? We're Earth. But unfortunately, we're heading in the more Venus direction. I'd quite like to stay in the Earth sort of ballpark. Spain, ground temperature, 60 centigrade. Not great for crops, that is it. Just thinking ahead. Atlantic temperature also soaring. Just up it goes. Now, you have to ask yourself, if things are looking like that now, what's it all going to look like in 10 years? Just a little, I don't know, spoiler. We're in quite a lot of trouble, I'm afraid to say. And that's why Just Stop Oil are doing these actions. And they're also doing actions with the Labour Party. They did it the other week with Keir Starmer. Don't know if, so close to Keir Starmer, they're protesting him at his own campaign events. Now, if we're talking about compensation from political parties, Mr. Shaps, or whatever you call yourself, how about we get compensation from, I don't know, Liz Truss for sending mortgage rates hiking, soaring because of her batshit policies. We didn't get any compensation for that. Do you know who did get compensation, though? For the disaster of Liz Truss' premiership. Do you want a clue? Drum roll. Liz Truss did. Yeah, she got a 18 grand payoff when her premiership imploded. What? I mean, why? So did Boris Johnson, again, as well. Similar theme there. Trash the country, get a shitload of taxpayers' money, leave the crime scene with a little golden goodbye, golden handshake. Now, I mean, could we also get compensation for all the taxpayers' money that was lavished on PPE contracts for all those people who are, I would say, quite suspiciously close to the Conservative Party? Just saying, if we're talking compensation, maybe that's more valid than inventing pretty spurious attacks on a Labour leadership, which doesn't need attacks invented against it because it sucks. Largely because Mr. Shaps, Mr. Green, whatever, because they've moved towards where you are. That's the problem with the Labour Party. That's the issue at the moment. They don't stand, unfortunately, against the very heinous policies that the Conservative Party has imposed on the country with catastrophic consequences. So, you know, your letter's completely bonkers. It was funny, though. It was funny. You amused me. I needed a bit of that. So, here's the Grand Chaps. Not something I thought I'd ever say. Anyway, I will have another video following the by-election results, which, frankly, will be coming out not that long after I've done this video. So we'll see how those go. Let's hope it's I would say, a deserved result for the Conservative Party, given what they've done for the last 13 years. But we'll have full analysis as it happens. Do like, subscribe, do support us on patreon.com/ownjazz84. Listen to us on the podcast. I'll see you in a bit.